Well, good afternoon. I have a question here. How many of you have climbed this mountain to the very top? There's a few of you that need to do it. At 5 in the morning, I woke up and went and climbed the whole thing. I was the first one in that mountain this morning. As a reminder, this is going to be your handout for the lecture. You can talk to Cecilia if you're interested in getting a copy of this book. And this book, what we're going to focus in this particular lecture is going to be chapter 22nd. In chapter 22nd, that's where you're going to see what is called the 10-hit hypothesis. So in the book, you can learn more about it. As well as we have the children's books, and you can download a few of the chapters of the book for free by going to this website. Go to healthwise.store, and then once you're there, select free downloads, and you can download multiple chapters in multiple languages for free. Okay, healthwise.store. That's where you find it. And also I'll share with you these resources if you want to do follow-up on the things that we're talking about. All my research, I'm going to be sharing quite a bit of my research. You can find it on that website of ResearchGate. ResearchGate, just Google Francisco Ramirez ResearchGate. That should take you there. And also there's the Twitter account, EddieRDMD, as well as the YouTube page, Dr. Eddie Ramirez, and also the Instagram page, Dr. Eddie Ramirez. Okay? Let me show you a few things that we've been putting there on Instagram lately. This one, how motivation is affected by inflammation. We talked about inflammation a few nights ago. It's interesting because many times the person is doing behaviors to manipulate their dopamine, to make them feel good, by eating the wrong things and so forth. But by doing those things, you actually cause inflammation, and your ability to experience pleasure is affected. See, it's a vicious cycle. This other very interesting study, how many of the new drugs that come out in the market, new medications, they're actually not better than the old versions. They're much more expensive. They have a better marketing department, and they try to convince you, that they may be necessarily better, but many times it's not necessarily true. The generic is doing a good job. This other one on the importance of music to stimulate your brain. You need to be, filling your homes with good, stimulating music. Not all the music is the same. I'll show you a very interesting study that I did later on in the lecture. This also very interesting study, how caffeine affects physical performance. So if you're into physical performance, caffeine is not the best thing to take. In fact, in America, Tom Brady, the famous quarterback from the New England Patriots, the guy didn't take a single drop of caffeine, and was able to win the Super Bowl and so forth many times. So watch out for caffeine as it affects tremendously athletic performance. And this other one, very interesting study, how caffeine affects in a very negative way your quality of sleep. And that's not good, because if you affect the sleep, you start a domino effect of many other potential problems. So today I want to talk to you about the holistic approach to anxiety and depression. Very interesting article that came out in journal Nature, one of the top journals in the world. They were doing a little review of what is our understanding of depression. And notice what they found out. They said that you're more likely to be cured of cancer than of depression. Because today, depression is becoming chronic, becoming long, those cases of depression. And notice what it says there. It says there in the article that the medications help about half of the patients, but only 28% of them actually feel healed from the medication. So there must be something else you can do for depression, and that's exactly what we are going to be talking about today. Let me start telling you the following story. This is Christy. Christy grew up in a good family, but started making some wrong choices. And very soon, she was involved in multiple addictions as she started having some issues with her mood, and she started treating those mood problems with alcohol and cigarettes and so forth. And very soon, her life started getting out of control. And the parents knew about our program. So they tricked her. They told her, Christy, we want to send you to a health spa. Come and sign up. So she signed up thinking that it was a health spa, but it was actually the depression recovery program. So she actually didn't want it to be there. So as soon as she got there, she started making plans to escape. And she tried to escape, and we caught her. She tried to escape a second time. We got her again. She tried to escape a third time. We got her. She tried to escape a fourth time, and we got her. So we had a staff meeting, and we said, you know what? We need to do something about this. Christy's going to escape unless we do something. So we decided in the meeting that somebody was going to sleep outside of her door room. So in case she tried to escape in the middle of the night, she was going to stumble there on the staff meeting. So something happened to her. She felt that we really wanted to help her. And she started cooperating with the program. And by the time that the program was over, she was feeling fantastically great. In fact, she tells in her story how it has been years since the last time she felt so good. In fact, she finished the program and she requested to stay some additional time to kind of compensate for the time that she had missed, with her revelry, trying to escape and not do the program and so forth. Well, today, Christy is completely depression-free. Christy doesn't take a single psychiatric medication. In fact, Christy has finished now her master's degree in nursing. She is married, and she uses part of her time to educate others on the importance of good habits to have good mental health. In fact, if you want to see her testimony, just Google the following words: 3ABN, Christy Christopher, by the word of her testimony. So, Christy Christopher, 3ABN, by the word of her testimony. And you'll find the link there to the audio. You can listen to her testimony in her own words. So these programs take place in Weimar, California. Now there's two ways that we apply these programs. One is in a residential fashion. you come to us and stay with us. And the second one is with the 8-week depression program. And that's more of a community program. People come once a week for a 2-hour program, and then they can do their homework for a whole week, and then they come back, learn a few more things, and then apply them for the week, and then in that way, in 8 weeks, they're able to absorb the whole program. This is my study, and you can see here a little bit about the statistics of our depression program. Notice here that the patients arrive with quite a bit of high depression, and this is in a matter of 10 days. Look at the tremendous decrease that occur in 10 days. It is something that you have to witness it to believe it, the tremendous improvement that happens. Why do we have such good success? Because we focus at asking the question, what is causing the depression? Isn't that a good question to ask? See, if I just give medication to the patient and I don't change anything else, I'm just treating symptoms. I'm not treating the root cause of the problem. And the similar story happens with anxiety. If you are in the clinical practice, you know that treating anxiety is very hard. But look at the tremendous response that happens when somebody with anxiety comes to the 10-day program. This is the testimony I was telling you. So Christy Christopher, by the word of her testimony. So how do we know if somebody has depression? Well, there is an international, I'm going to take a picture, go ahead. There is an international guideline that is called the DSM-5. And this is the guideline that is used worldwide. Anywhere in the world, this guideline is used. And basically what it does, it starts to identify the symptoms of depression. So the way we diagnose a depression, somebody that has these symptoms, at least, 5 out of them for at least 2 weeks without having a recent emotional trauma, that's how we diagnose depression. So let's just go briefly through each one of those symptoms. So we have deep sadness. Males and females represent this symptom usually differently. Among females, they come and tell me, "Doctor, I don't know why this small thing is making me cry. I shouldn't be crying for this small thing, So they start crying spontaneously. Among males, the way that they tell me that they have this symptom, they said, "Doctor, something is wrong inside of me. I cannot put my finger what it is, but I know something is not right." So that's the first symptom. Second symptom, apathy. They wake up in the morning and they don't look forward to the day that you're about to face. In fact, some of them tell me, "Doctor, my problem is that I'm getting old. And old people feel like this." No, this is not a normal symptom. And when you wake up in the morning, you should be looking forward to the day that you are about to face. Third symptom, classic symptom of agitation. The patient is losing his patience very easily. Another symptom that can qualify for this one is what is called psychomotor retardation, which basically means you either speak or move too slowly, okay? Any of those would qualify for that symptom. And then sleep problems. And you even know this one. Patient wakes up at 2 or 3 a.m., and what happens? They cannot go back to sleep. And the reason being is because of the changes in the chemistry at the level of the brain. So there's a chemical that helps us feel good. That's a chemical called serotonin. And when somebody is having issues with depression, multiple changes happen at the level of the brain, but one specifically is serotonin. It starts to decrease dramatically. So by decreasing that serotonin is generated in the day, and then the body converts the amount of serotonin that you have into melatonin. So if there is low serotonin in the day, there's going to be low melatonin in the night. And you're going to have trouble going to sleep, maintaining the sleep state, having deep quality sleep, waking up too early. In fact, there's a pattern very clearly. The more severe the depression, the earlier you wake up. As the patient is recovering, the time that they're waking up very late, very early in the night will start to increase. And then the opposite is also true. So sleeping too little qualifies for that, but also what is called hypersomnia, sleeping too much. And we get those patients in our program. Some of these patients are sleeping 14, 16 hours a day. Imagine, Imagine if you were sleeping 16 hours. You can barely do anything in your day, By the time that you wake up and take a shower and eat something, man, the day is almost, running out. And the patients tell me, "Doctor, I wish I could sleep a little bit more. It looks like I didn't sleep enough." That's how severe that hypersomnia can impair somebody. And then weight or appetite changes. Many times the patient is using food as medication. They know that if they eat those cookies, if they drink that caffeine, if they drink that chocolate, if they eat that sugary thing, those types of foods temporarily increase serotonin in the brain. But that's the problem, is temporarily. So it increases and then it crashes down. And what do you need to do? You need a second dose. So here you are, eating and eating and eating throughout the whole day. And at the end of the day, you ate a bunch of calories. And you need to do something with those calories. And you end up, gaining weight and so forth, secondary to, eating those types of foods. But the opposite is also true. There are some patients that don't want to eat when they have depression. And these are the ones that are going to have a very severe type of depression. Because just think about it. What I eat becomes the chemistry of my brain. So if I'm not eating the right type of food, even if you prescribe an antidepressant, it doesn't work because the brain cannot make that right chemistry. So either extreme would count. Next one is the lack of concentration. The person cannot put their mind to what they are trying to do. They cannot put their mind to understand that. And then you have feelings of worthlessness, in which the patient thinks that they're not important. The person thinks that they're not adding anything to the relationship, to the work site, to the church, to the family, and so forth, because they believe, that they are worthless. And this is secondary to that changes in the neurochemistry. And then the dangerous type of morbid thoughts. Morbid thoughts is many different things. It could be that you are constantly thinking about disease, you're thinking about death, you're thinking about harming yourself, or you're thinking about harming others. Have you seen in the news those people that go into some meeting with a gun and start shooting everybody? Morbid thoughts, classic. Those people have a severe type of depression which causes that behavior because they start harming others secondary to the morbid thoughts that they had. And sadly, this is something that is becoming quite common. I mean, just observe, for example, what some young people tattoo themselves. Sometimes all these bones and symbols of death, the shirts that they use. Notice the images that you find in the snowboards and so forth. You go to many of the art galleries, and they have these dark and gloomy type of pictures. You know, that is morbid thoughts. They are acting the morbid thoughts that they themselves are struggling with. And then finally, fatigue, which to me is very interesting because many times the patient is not going to show at the medical consultation for the other symptoms, but they'll come for that. And they're going to tell me, doctor, I have this tiredness that it just doesn't go away with anything. What's wrong with me, doctor? And as we start asking the questions, sure enough, the other symptoms are present, but the person is not putting, their attention and realizing that those other symptoms are affecting their life. Now, it's important for the patient to be honest. Sometimes the patients try to hide these symptoms, even when they come to the doctor. I had cases, for example, we had this couple recently, and the husband sit down in the chair, and then the wife was behind them. So then, as we started thinking about potential depression, we started asking them the symptoms, Hey, are you, having issues with your sleep? Are you sleeping too much, sleeping too little? The husband would say, the wife would say, yeah. Are you, experiencing some changes in your weight? Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? Are you changing your appetite? Husband, no. Wife, yes. So after 3-4 questions, we had to stop the interview and say, wait a minute. Somebody is telling the truth and somebody is not telling the truth. So immediately the wife jumped in there and started giving clear examples showing how he had the problem, but he was trying to deny it. So you need to be honest in order to get, the proper help. Now, if it's only 2 to 4 symptoms instead of the 5 out of 9, that is what we call a minor depression. Things are not completely wrong, but things are not completely fine. It's somewhere there in the middle that they're going through life, and also the lifestyle interventions are going to be able to help that subgroup of patients. The statistics tells us that depression keeps going up. Since 1915 is the first time that depression started to be measured, and we know that every single year we see more and more cases of depression. The average age is decreasing. Nowadays, younger and younger people are having depression. And the problem with depression is that not only affects at the level of the mind, but it starts affecting multiple functions in the body, from your immunity to your hormones to addictive habits to decline in your physical condition and things in the body start responding in a negative way. So the sooner that we can deal with this, the better the outcome of the patient. And statistic tells us that among females, 1 out of 4 females is going to suffer from depression at some point in their lives. Among males, the statistic is 1 out of 8. Now, how come females have higher risk? This has to do in part to the female system. As they go, especially through menopause, that change of hormones end up affecting multiple things in the body. Now, what about suicide? Let me tell you this story from San Francisco. I used to live close by this beautiful bridge of the Golden Gate. This bridge is humongous. This bridge is so big that when they're painting the bridge, by the time they finish painting it, the original painting is already too old. So they're like constantly working on this bridge. Sadly, some people come here to commit suicide. They, stop in the middle there, and then they jump there, and it's a long ways down there to the water. And believe it or not, some people actually have survived the jump. So a very smart psychologist started finding those survivors and started asking very good, relevant questions. He asked them, number 1 question, did you want to commit suicide? What was the answer of the question? Yes, I wanted to commit suicide. Then he asked an interesting follow-up question. He was investigating, what do the people that try to commit suicide, what are they thinking? Which is, a very good, piece of information. So he asked him, are you glad that you were not able to complete your suicidal attempt? What was the answer? Yes, I'm very happy that I didn't finish my suicidal attempt. So I said, wait a minute. First, you're telling me that you wanted to commit suicide. Now you're telling me you're happy you didn't complete your suicidal attempt. When did you change your opinion? Isn't that a good question? When did you change your mind? What was their answer? As soon as my feet left solid ground, I realized I was making the biggest mistake in my life. And the issue is that depression increases impulsivity. The person ends up sometimes saying things that later on they regret. They go to the store and they start buying all kinds of things. And not until the credit card bill comes and why did I spend so much money? I didn't even need these things. Why? Because of that impulsivity. So there must be something that you can do for depression. And that's exactly what we focus in our paper. This is my study. And in this study that we did together with Dr. Netley, we were trying to identify the causes of depression. What is causing the depression is the question that we ask. So you can go to the ResearchGate page, the one I told you. You can get the full paper. If you don't speak English, just use Google Translate. It'll translate the paper into the language of your choice. So this is what we call the 10-hit hypothesis. So this is the way that we wrote this paper. We went to the scientific literature and we were asking the question, what has been published about depression? And we found out that there are more than 100 studies that have documented more than 100 causes for depression. And what we did, we grouped those 100 causes into 10 groups. So it is our hypothesis that if somebody has 4 or more out of the list of 10 things that I'm going to show you in a minute, you're going to end up with depression and or anxiety. So let's go and explore quickly those 10 causes. Number 1, the genetic factor. The person would qualify to have the genetic factor if they carry certain genes for depression. Among them, how to identify that? Well, if you have close relatives that have suffered depression or anxiety, or that have attempted suicide, there's a possibility that you may be carrying some of those genes. Also, if the person has a problem in certain biochemical issues in the brain, the most common one is that it can be a methylation or an undermethylation problem, and there are specific tests that you can run to identify those people that may potentially have the problem. Bad news is that you cannot change this genetic factor. But how many did we say you need to have? 4 or more. So you can have this one. It doesn't mean that, you will for sure end up with depression at the end of your days. Not necessarily. Next one, developmental. It will qualify for developmental hit if you have somebody that grew up in a house when there was a lot of dysfunctionality. You qualify for this if when you were young you suffer any type of abuse. You will qualify for this if you are a female and your first menstrual period was younger than 11 years. It will qualify for this one. You qualify for this one if you didn't grow up with both biological parents in your home. It will qualify for this one if you are a grandmother or grandfather and you were raising the children of your children. This one is a hit for the grandparents. It will qualify for them. So, bad news, good news. Bad news is that for developmental, you can also, you cannot reverse those things. Those things are in the past, So the good news is that in order to have the depression, you're going to need 4 or more. So you can have both of those hits in your past. It doesn't mean that you're destined to be depressed for the rest of your life. So let's see the ones that you can change. Lifestyle. You will qualify for the lifestyle hit if you have, if you're not having a regular exercise program. That's why it's so important to do exercise. 2, if you're not exposing yourselves to bright light on a regular basis. If you live, in places that are very dark in the winter, you may need to invest in a bright light to expose yourself to this bright light every day. In the morning is the ideal time to use that. Or 3rd, you are not breathing fresh air on a regular basis. You spend too much time inside buildings and you don't go out and breathe the fresh air. Question, can you change these 3 factors? Yes or no? Yes, it's possible to change these 3 factors. Next one, circadian rhythm. It will qualify for circadian rhythm if you have disorder in your life. That horrible habit of eating at all times in the day, that is horrible for your mental health. I actually have a few studies I have personally done about that subject. 2, if you are not being regular at the time you go to bed and you wake up, it will qualify for that. Or 3, if you have insomnia on a regular basis. Any of those 3 would qualify for that. Question, can you change these 3 factors? Yes, it's possible to improve, including the sleep issue. As you deal with the root cause of the problem, you can correct that sleep issue. Next one, addiction hit. You will qualify for addiction hit if the person is a regular alcohol consumer, is using cigarette, nicotine in any of its forms, is using illegal drugs, is using certain legal drugs like benzodiazepines, medications like alprazolam, lorazepam, and so forth. Also, it will qualify for addictions if you're a regular user of caffeine, would also qualify for that. Question, can you overcome addictions? Is that something that is possible? Yes or no? Yes, it's possible to overcome addictions. Next one, nutrition. As I mentioned to you, this one makes all the sense in the world because what you eat becomes the chemicals in your brain. So you qualify for nutrition hit if you are in one of those keto high protein diets. Those diets are not good at all for your mental health. I don't have time to explain to you the whole biochemistry, but you interfere very much with the neurochemistry by eating that type of diets. It will qualify for the nutrition hit if you have a simple carbohydrate addiction. You're eating all this sugar and white flour on a regular basis. You will qualify for nutrition hit if you don't have certain key nutrients in your food on a regular basis, such as not eating enough tryptophan, not eating enough folate, not eating enough iron, not eating enough vitamin B6. If you don't have these things, not eating enough omega-3, if you don't eat these things on a regular basis, your brain is going to have a hard time making the right neurochemistry. And then hit number 7, the toxic hit. You qualify for toxic hit if you're being exposed to certain toxicities that secondarily affect the mental health. So which toxicities? Things like lead, things like cadmium. People that work in battery factories expose themselves to this cadmium. But the most common one happens to be exposure to mercury. Anybody has a guess where people expose themselves to mercury? Fish. Sadly, today, every fish has mercury. I even done research on the subject. I have presented research at the toxicology meetings. There's no such thing as mercury-free fish. In fact, the problem is that the body has a hard time getting rid of the mercury. And the mercury likes to go to your nervous tissue, increasing your risk for dementia and other health problems. Question, can you avoid toxins? Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. As you become aware, then you can start making changes in your choices. Third one, next one is 3-in-1. One, the social aspect of things. You are not surrounded with people that gives you encouragement and support. And you don't belong to a group that meets on a regular basis, like a church and so forth. Or stress. You're under a constant stress type of situation at your work, in your family, and so forth. Or grief. You lost something very important in your life, relative, a thing, a part of your body, and you have not been able to overcome that loss. Any of those factors would qualify for that. Next one is the exception of the rule, the medical hit. You'll qualify for the medical hit if you have certain medical conditions that need the help of a competent health professional to, stabilize those things. What conditions? Things like an autoimmune condition, things like a diabetes that is not well under control, things like a cancer, things like liver problems or kidney problems, things like certain viral infections like hepatitis C. So you need to deal with the problem and have a competent medical person help you. Also, hormone problems. The most common one is thyroid. I've seen many people that have thyroid problems and they want to treat this thing in the wrong way. Look, I'm telling you, you can get yourself in really big trouble if you are not treating that thyroid gland correctly. And last one, the frontal lobe hit. You qualify for the frontal lobe hit if you have, if you're doing things that go against the function of the frontal lobe. What things? Things like going against your conscience, that would qualify for that. Things like listening to the wrong type of music, that would qualify for that. Things like doing the wrong type of sexual behavior outside of the context of marriage would qualify for that. And or you're not doing enough things to stimulate your frontal lobe. So as you can see, depression will occur when we have 4 or more out of this list of 10 hits. So the hypothesis of a program is that things that affect the frontal lobes of the brain, notice when somebody is depressed, notice how this frontal lobe has very little activity. Notice when the patient recovers, his frontal lobe activity increases tremendously. So the question is, what causes depression? Did the low activity of the frontal lobe cause the depression, or did the depression cause that low activity of the frontal lobe? It is our hypothesis that things that affect the frontal lobe function will give us depression. Notice this interesting clip. This is you can find this on my channel, the drEddieRamirez.com. Just look for the short video. Let me summarize it. This is ABC News. It's a main television channel in America. And this is a reporter, and she's doing this test that is called a functional MRI. It measures how much blood is in the brain. So then she takes the test, she drinks 1 cup of coffee, and then she repeats the same test. Notice what happens. This is the brain before the caffeine. Notice the redness all over the place. That's good, blood flow circulation. This is the brain after just 1 cup of coffee. 40% decrease blood flow to the brain. You think this is good? No, this is not good. This is going to affect even at the level of your spirituality. In the past, they used to do lobotomies. They used to destroy the frontal lobe as part of the treatment. That's the wrong thing to do. Instead, something that we do to stimulate the frontal lobe is hot and cold hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy is an excellent way to stimulate your frontal lobe. Another thing that can affect your sleep is blue light at night. You shouldn't be exposing yourself to blue light at night. Watching your cell phone, doing computer and so forth. If you're going to be doing that, you need to have a blue light filter. And these are some of my studies. This is one showing that nicotine has a very negative effect on your mental health. And this very interesting study showing that music therapy is something scientific, something that works. In fact, this music therapy, we use it in our program. Every patient of ours receives classical music therapy. That's the therapy of choice. Look at this one. This is my study. In this study, we're documenting that listening to channels like MTV, VH1, this type of music, people that are exposed to this have more than double their risk for addictions like smoking. And we theorize that this happens because this type of music suppresses the function of your frontal lobe. So don't listen to the wrong type of things. Marijuana, something that is very commonly being used today. This is also another one of my studies. We're documenting here how people that use marijuana, they tend to have worse mental health. And this other study, thank you very much. This one documenting the same thing, how cannabis products worsen mental health. And something that our brain needs is tryptophan. Tryptophan is going to become serotonin in your body. So when somebody is struggling with depression or anxiety, they need to increase the amount of tryptophan they're eating. Where do we find tryptophan? Some people say, oh, whole milk. There is some there, but it's actually minimum. Better sources, black-eyed peas, or black walnuts, or almonds, sesame seeds, gluten flour, roasted pumpkin seeds, and the king of tryptophan is tofu. Tofu, a fantastic food, very versatile. You can make, something sweet. You can make something spicy. You can make something salty. Go to Mr. Google and ask him, Recipe for tofu. Man, there's thousands and thousands of recipes there that you can cook. Here documenting how alcohol has a very negative effect on your mental health and how people that quit the alcohol, their mental health improves. This other one documenting how going against your conscience is not good for you. All these studies are my studies. You can find them on that ResearchGate page that I told you. This one, how not growing up with both biological parents actually affects the sexual behavior later on in life. And these people more likely, to get involved in premarital sexual relationships and so forth when both parents are not on board. This other one, very sad study. This is a big sample that we used in our study, 5,861. We were asking those 5,800 patients, did you grow up in a household where they abuse alcohol? You know what we found? We found out that almost half of them did. Sadly, that is how common, alcohol abuse occurs in our society today. This one documenting how benzodiazepines, these medications for anxiety, can decrease tremendously in a matter of 8 weeks as the person deals with the root cause of the problem. And this other one documenting how in a matter of 10 days, depression starts to improve, anxiety starts to improve, so that in those 10 days, we're able to decrease the amount of those benzodiazepines that the patient is using. This other one documenting the importance of exercise to help with those suicidal thoughts. Exercise decreases those suicidal thoughts. And this is not something new. There are multiple studies documenting how exercise is essential for mental health. And also, this other one, very interesting, how exercise not only helps you with your mental health, but exercise has all kinds of advantages in your body. And this other one, how those good lifestyle habits not only improve your mental health, decrease risk of suicide, but your whole overall lifestyle improves as you apply these healthy principles. And this other one documenting how patients with autoimmune conditions, they respond wonderfully to the lifestyle interventions. And this other one, how patients that have been exposed previously to lead, they actually respond very well as we start making the lifestyle changes and their mental health starts to improve. And this one showing that if you don't eat enough iron, that could potentially affect your mental health. Now, some people think, iron, that means I need to eat meat. Not necessarily. Did you know that avocados have more iron than meat? Mangoes has more iron than meat. Wheat germ has more iron than meat. So there's many different foods that are very good for your mental health. You can find the study there on my Twitter account. And this other one, how patients that have a history of stroke, these patients also benefit from the lifestyle changes, and we're able to decrease both their depression and anxiety. And this other one showing the negative effects that marijuana has on mental health. How negative it is? Well, if you can see, marijuana has almost the same negative effect as opioids, this heroin and its cousins, as well as the benzodiazepines. So no, marijuana is not harmless. Marijuana has many, many problems. Let me show you this one. This is a special scan. It's called the SPECT scan. And this is a normal scan. We're seeing the brain from the bottom up. And here is where the spine connects to the brain. In a matter of this patient that is 17 years old has been using marijuana on the weekends. When you run the same scan, this is how his brain looks like. Now, let me tell you this. This is not an anatomical scan. This is a functional scan. We're checking the function of the brain. Notice how his frontal lobe is severely impaired. Do you see the big holes, quote, quote, that are there? And same thing happens here with the frontal lobe. Notice the tremendous decrease in this marijuana user. The other one was alcohol, excuse me. And this one is also marijuana just on the weekends. All of them have a negative effect. And this is another one of my studies. This one we were documenting how the methods of relaxation that people are using, not all of them are the same, not all of them are harmless. And we're documenting that the best methods of relaxation are the Bible and prayer. And we know that strong religious faith actually helps people heal faster from their depression. In fact, how fast? 70 times faster than when you don't add that spiritual element. And sadly, places like Switzerland, places like France, that the psychologist talks about faith, oh, that's heresy, isn't it? Yet the research is clear. You need that spiritual element as you help motivate the patient do those right lifestyle changes. So they're actually going against science by claiming that they are doing things according to science, which is a fascinating contradiction of this world. In fact, we know that prayer activates the frontal lobe. In the book Steps to Christ, or Called to Stand Apart, Sister White says that prayer is opening our hearts to God just as we do with a friend. In this published paper in the secular scientific literature, they ask people to think about a loved one. Notice, by thinking about a loved one, you activate the frontal lobe. And then they ask people to pray. And then they check again what was happening at the level of the brain. Notice that prayer was activating very similar regions in the brain as, thinking about a loved one. Because prayer is part of a relationship with God. So you activate the frontal lobe, and that helps you with your mental health. But sadly, commonly prescribed things like meditation, unfortunately, do the opposite. They inhibit the frontal lobe, and they actually activate the limbic system, which happens to be, the opposite of your frontal lobe in your brain. Same thing with repetitive type of prayers that many Catholics do and so forth. That repetitive type of prayer does not have a very good effect at the level of the frontal lobe. As well as what some of our friends, the evangelicals, do, this glossolalia, speaking in tongues. You actually suppress the frontal lobe by doing those types of behaviors. It's not good for your brain to do that. In fact, here's another study showing how this is by singing, gospel songs. Notice the redness there. That means there's lots of activity in that frontal lobe. And compare that when somebody's speaking in tongues. Notice how that redness starts to go away because you are suppressing the frontal lobe of your brain. Not good, because that increases your risk of suicide. Sadly, some of these wrong type of things are starting to come into our midst. Same thing when you do long-term, Eastern meditation. Notice absolutely no activity whatsoever in the frontal lobe is mostly stimulating your limbic system. It's not a good thing to do for your mental health. We have countless of patients that arrive in our program because they're doing these types of behaviors. They are not good for you. Instead, what do we need to do? We need to read this book as a mean of... We have French and English, Spanish and English. So the Bible is the most efficacious book of any other book if you put all the other books together. The greatness of its themes, the elevated simplicity of its expressions, the beauty of its figures, they revive and stimulate the thought in a way that nothing else can do it. That's exactly what we want, isn't it? We've been talking about the things that stimulate the frontal lobe are therapeutical for your brain. And he continues the quotation. There is no other study that can give mental power as the one that you find when you start studying its wonderful truths of revelation. The mind that in this way comes in contact with the thoughts of the infinite being cannot help but develop and strengthen. Isn't that powerful? And that is why, Bible therapy is good to help somebody as they are struggling with their depression. Here's another one. Tibetan monks, doing the Buddhist meditation, again, affecting their frontal lobes. And the problem with this meditation is that you literally start to change the brain. You start creating negative neuroplasticity. So the areas of the brain that I don't want to stimulate, by doing long-term Eastern meditation, you end up stimulating these areas of the brain. And here is another study. Notice here the areas of the brain that were stimulated by Eastern meditation. It is not the frontal lobes, which are here, but rather is stimulating here in the center here where we have our limbic system, not our frontal lobes of the brain, which is what I want to do, what prayer and Bible study do. This is an excellent article. Go ahead and Google this and read it. Fabulous, absolutely wonderful. It's an article from The Humanist, a magazine that is promoting, secular thinking and so forth. And this article is documenting how this person and their friends started going into these Buddhist type of retreats up in, and Hindu retreats in India. And their friends started becoming severely depressed. In fact, some of them started committing suicide secondary to doing that type of thing. And she's arguing, saying, this stuff is a religion, you cannot separate that religious aspect from this type of behaviors. Also, if you want another good book, this is a fantastic book from an Oxford University scholar. It's called The Buddha Pill. If you want the scientific reasons why yoga and Eastern meditation are not the best things for your mind. He's coming from a secular angle, excellent, documenting the issues that it has. And that mindfulness also, it's overhype. And everything is mindfulness today. And we don't even have a definition of mindfulness. So how can we study mindfulness if we don't even know what this mindfulness is? Very interesting article also. Also, diet is important, but it's very clear that whole food plant-based diet improves your immunity, decreases inflammation, and improves depression. So in closing, let me tell you the story of Mikala. Mikala, a beautiful girl that by the age of 13 was sexually abused by a close friend of the family. And this started a trend of depression of Mikala. And the way that she started dealing with her depression is that she started establishing boyfriend-girlfriend relationships that would become very intimate very soon. And then the boyfriend will dump her off, and she would start the cycle over and over again. Let me ask you this. Did that help with her depression? Yes or no? No, it actually started making that depression worse. So by the time she went to a health professional, she was so severely depressed that they have to give her 5 medications to control her. Okay? And still, she was pretty smart. She was able to get a job at the local pharmacy, even though she was over-medicated. And as soon as she got there, she caught the attention of the manager of the pharmacy. Very soon, they start establishing a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. So, after a couple of weeks, he invited her to go down to one of the beautiful beaches of Mexico to spend, a long weekend there. And in the morning, after they got there, the boyfriend put on his shorts and went for a swim. And he left his cell phone there in the room. And Mikala, very curious, gets a cell phone and realizes it doesn't have any password whatsoever. So the first thing that she goes to the gallery of pictures on the phone. And what is her shock? To realize that this boyfriend was going out with her co-workers at the pharmacy at the same time that he was going out with her. So suddenly, her world crumbled over. And she said, you know what? My life is over. She got the bottle of pills of her medication and drank the whole thing. Good thing the boyfriend found her very soon after that, took her to the ER. They were able to remove most of that medication and send her back to the hotel later in the evening. But when she got back, she realized that she was alone with this boy, and she said, no, my life is over. She takes another one of those bottles of medication and takes the whole thing. And this one was a little bit more nasty because it caused the blood pressure to crash down. So now she's experiencing, kidney failure and all kinds of issues, a big headache for the, internal medicine doctors dealing with this case. And when the boyfriend sees all the mess that he has caused, he says, oops, I need to go back to America, and leaves her down there in Mexico by herself. Good thing she had a loving aunt that flew from America to be with her while she was recovering. And after a few days, she was able to be released from the hospital. And her aunt knew about our depression program, so she brought her there to Weimar. And when she got there, she was very angry. She actually didn't want it to be there. But after starting to work with her and dealing with the root causes of her depression, in a matter of days, the smile of Mikala returned. And she started telling us it had been a long time since the last time that she felt that great. And today Mikala doesn't take a single medication. Mikala is depression-free and in fact teaches others of what you can do to overcome depression. So as you can see, there is hope for depression. The condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Many of the diseases from which men suffer are the result of what? Mental depression. Grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, distrust all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. Lots of truth there, isn't it? So if we want to win the battle against depression, we have to identify the root causes of the problem and work at reversing them. That's the way that we will overcome depression forever. Thank you very much.